Charlie Kirk's suspect's trans lover Lance Twiggs goes missing 6 weeks after political assassination. This was breaking news from today. Charlie Kirk was a legend. He really was, and he inspired a new era of America. An era where a lot of people refuse to drop his microphone and will continue to speak. Now, they killed the negotiator, but that doesn't mean we will be silent. Now, one of the interesting characters in this lore is the suspect, the killer that allegedly killed Charlie Kirk. It's allegedly because, he didn't get the death penalty yet. He's in court, even though they have DNA evidence, fingerprint evidence. He admitted it. He admitted it multiple times to multiple people, etc., etc. He had a trans boyfriend, furry lover. And the furry lover's gone. He's gone. He disappeared into the ether. This is actually kind of terrifying. No, this is not Witsec, or else I guess we would sort of know that this person would be in Witsec. It's kind of terrifying. Bro disappeared. Now, there are a lot of suspected killers of Charlie Kirk, so we are going to be going through some of the lore here. All right, because he isn't real. Oh, he's real. There's evidence he's real. Turkey Tom just made a video basically proving that he's real. So you are not ready. We're going to be looking at that today. So first, we have to introduce you to Candace Owens. Candace Owens has been essentially kind of shitting on Charlie Kirk's legacy for the last couple of months, ever since he died, and ever since he was brutally murdered by a radical leftist gay furry lover. To be clear, let's make this clear. So that absolute degenerate fuck killed him and was celebrated by all the leftists, and Candace Owens is running defense for terrorists to spit on his corpse by releasing epic text messages between them. And it's disgusting. And we're going to be talking about a little bit of the text message leaking, not a lot because I think it's horrible. So basically, she leaks these DMs from Charlie Kirk talking about, because this is public already, so why not talk about it? Releasing what music they're listening to. Yeah, oh my god, Nicki's verse on that is the best. First, I eat your brains. Yes, oh my god, that makes me so happy. Sasquatch, Godzilla, King Kong, Loch Ness, Goblin, Ghoul, a zombie with no conscience. When Nikki drops, I lose my mind. She is the best. I do my weights to that song. Jay-Z's verse amazing. This is cringe as fuck, man. This is horrible. Why would you release this? This is 2018, bro. He was 24 at the time. Nick Fuentes responds, damn, you didn't have to expose him like this. You didn't have to expose him like that. You were not friends when he died, okay? You were not. He cut you off from all of his events for over a year. This is horrible. She's humiliating this man. He was a great man that died and inspired millions of people to find their faith. And this bitch out here dropping this fucking shit? Oh my lord. Now, this is not the worst thing she's done. She's essentially releasing new shows. This is her show that she released yesterday. Okay? Alright. I am back. Today on the show, I reveal more private messages from Charlie Kirk. You've got to be fucking kidding me. She is out here using old Charlie Kirk DMs to feed people to watch her show and push conspiracy theories that are dangerous, man. Now, I want to show you her leading conspiracy theory at the moment, because she blamed a whole lot of people for Charlie Kirk already. Now, you have to see how horrifying this is. So, this is a video from one of her streams, and it might be one of the worst things I have ever seen in my life. So, this is who she's blaming. Before we look at the most likely suspect, the guy, Tyler Robinson, the guy in custody, because there's literal video footage and also visual footage and also witnesses and also DNA at the scene, and also it was his gun, and also he admitted it twice. All right, that guy's the leading suspect right now. But let's see who all the other suspects are before we go too deep into the actual Tyler Robinson situation. Let's see what Candace Owens has to say.
Just really needed to just take a breather and really process everything that happened with Charlie and what it kind of means in terms of where we are. And I think it is a circumstance where we just know that he was truly betrayed in one.
Except he wasn't truly betrayed. There is no evidence that he was truly betrayed. After all of her private message leaking that she's been doing, she did not leak one message that he was betrayed. She leaked the message saying that one of his donors backed out because he didn't want Charlie Kirk to promote Tucker Carlson. That is the only thing she leaked. That's not some massive betrayal. Anyway, I'll get to Tucker Carlson in a minute, because Tucker Carlson is another character in this drama. The big traitor here is you.
Of the most egregious ways that I think I've ever seen.
Except that didn't happen. He was murdered by a radical leftist. okay? And radical leftists cheered. And you're running defense for terrorists in order to create this vendetta fucking driven bullshit.
It has made me lose faith in politics. It has made me fully lose faith in Trump.
Trump?
And
Why would you lose faith in Trump? Don't worry, it gets better.
Just my heart aches for the fact that he gave so much of his life to Trump and to politics. And they just were like, nope.
What do you mean they were like, nope?
That is it. It serves us or
That's it.
doesn't serve us, and we want to move on.
We want to move on. She's implying here that Trump got Charlie Kirk killed. Okay, now I'm not trying to make this controversial here or anything. I'm not trying to imply shit. That's what she's saying. All right. She is now directly implying that Donald Trump got Charlie Kirk killed. And no, he wasn't trying to move on. They gave him, they did the massive memorial. They flew in the whole fucking Oval Office there. Like, what are we talking about?
And so here's a holiday. Bro.
They gave him a holiday.
If they try to give me a holiday, what is with them giving people a holiday after they kill them? Why?
After they kill them. They gave him the Medal of Freedom. They gave him a holiday. What are we doing? After they kill them. That's pretty fucking flat out, bro.
Is that a thing? You know what I mean? Like, oh, Martin Luther King, what about this holiday? What about this boulevard? Anyways, let me knock off. Like, they're going to give Charlie Kirk a boulevard. They already did. They did in Israel. They gave him freaking boulevard. It's like...
Yeah, because they loved him in Israel because he was super duper pro-Israel. He was probably the #1 biggest pro-Israel voice in the world. So yeah, they gave him an entire boulevard in Israel that they're naming after him in one of the major cities, out of respect. And now it's the Jews again. They gave him a boulevard. They must have killed him.
As soon as they give you a boulevard and a holiday, they definitely killed you.
All right, so this is a collaboration between the Jews and the Trump administration to kill Charlie Kirk, the #1 fan of the Jews and the Trump administration. Like, this hurts me on every level. On every level, bro. You absolute fucking donkey. You donkey. This bitch is a donkey. So, let's get this squared away. Charlie Kirk dedicated his life to fight for Israel and Trump, and now she thinks that Israel and Trump killed him, and her evidence is that they are mourning his death. Them mourning his death is evidence that they killed him.
Okay, there's no question. They killed you. There's no way. That's like their signature thing. It's like that's what they do. It's the Fed signature. It's how they sign off after they murder you. So like holiday in a boulevard. And it's never on the nice side of town either.
Except this one is on the nice side of town, actually.
Charlie Kirk Boulevard is not going to be on the nice side of town.
Except it is. It's smack in the middle of Netanya, one of the major cities in Israel. So, well, there goes that theory.
Anyways, I will be back on the 27th, you guys. Thank you guys for all the support throughout these couple of weeks, these last really kind of 6 weeks since Charlie died.
So she says she'll be back on the 27th, which was yesterday, and she ends up going out on the 27th. Shocking news, October 27th. Time to reveal more private messages from Charlie Kirk. Oh my god, dude. She was like an actual fucking psycho. She was a psycho, dude. Now, Candace Owens has actually made 7 or 8 videos now on Charlie Kirk's assassination, essentially consistently blaming Israel and the Jews and Trump for killing him when we literally know who fucking killed him. Okay, what are we fucking doing? Are you absolutely insane? You know, the dude that's a psycho radical leftist that admitted it. That, like, what are we doing? Anyway, so this is how she knows that he was betrayed. This is her evidence for his betrayal.
Like I just said, had a vivid dream this weekend,
She had a dream.
Charlie came to me and he told me that he was betrayed. And so for me,
Right.
I don't have to believe that, but I do believe that. And it was the immediate sense I got, actually.
Right. There it is.
And I don't know who exactly it is that betrayed him, but I also felt in the dream that it is soon going to be revealed, that it's actually inevitable that it is going to be revealed, that there is nothing and no one that is going to stop the truth from coming out, and it is
Except it didn't get revealed.
going to have international consequences.
Right. So far there were no international consequences. I guess we're still waiting on those.
Take that to the bank. Quote me on that.
Okay.
Women
I am doing that.
tend to have a strong, like I just said.
Women tend to have a strong... Yeah, all right. So anyway, it was revealed to her in a dream that Charlie Kirk was betrayed and it'll have international consequences and stuff. And this is literally... It's literally nothing. It's literally nothing. And all the people pushing this shit are retarded. Every single person that's like, oh my god, she's literally on the pulse now. Yeah, y'all retarded. Sorry, y'all actually retarded. So anyway, so that's one major thing that's been going on. Another major thing in regards to the Charlie Kirk situation. So Tucker Carlson did a show with Nick Fuentes yesterday. Now, Nick Fuentes, for those of you unaware, was an arch nemesis of Charlie Kirk's. For better or for worse, they were arch nemesis. They hated each other miserably. They absolutely fucking hated each other. So now Tucker Carlson, who's kind of the de facto takeover of Charlie Kirk's actual organization, Turning Point USA, did an entire interview, or essentially it's a glaze piece where they puff each other up. They blow smoke up each other's ass for like 2 hours, essentially, on this interview. It's nothing that exciting happens that I saw. Now, I actually don't hate either of these people. I know that I'm supposed to. I like Nick Fuentes better than Tucker Carlson, as an example, because I think Tucker Carlson's like a complete fraud and a federal agent. But I do think that Nick Fuentes isn't. I think that Nick Fuentes actually does try his best, even if I disagree with him on specific areas. And I don't think that Charlie Kirk had the right approach, to be clear. I don't think Charlie Kirk had the right approach regarding Nick Fuentes. But now, to be clear, the actual Charlie Kirk approach was the following. Dinesh D'Souza, he's a conservative commentator, and this conservative commentator guy, did a debate with Nick Fuentes, where I've seen, in my opinion, Dinesh D'Souza beat Nick Fuentes in that debate. But they did a debate, and Dinesh D'Souza says the following. I'm posting 2 text exchanges with Charlie Kirk, where he calls Nick Fuentes vermin. I hate that he released these messages, man. I hate this. I absolutely hate this. I'm only showing this because it's public at this point. So, Charlie Kirk sent him messages, apparently, that this was a massive mistake that you did this, he's vermin, and you gave him one of the biggest boots of his career. This is what Charlie Kirk apparently said to Dinesh D'Souza, and here's another message, apparently, from Charlie Kirk to Dinesh D'Souza. You have no idea the damage you did by talking to him and complimenting him, you're making him bigger. We've been fighting this guy for 6 years, you are the first mainstream voice to debate him and give him a compliment. That makes him bigger and more powerful. It seems like Charlie Kirk was doing everything in his power to keep Nick Fuentes from engaging in any conversation. These texts are released by Dinesh himself and are corroborated by other people. Now, I don't know if they're real, if they're not real, whatever, take it with a grain of salt. I just hate the leaking. I think the leaking is horrible. Now, to be clear, this hatred went both ways. So this is very clear that Charlie Kirk absolutely hated Nick Fuentes. I think too much, to be honest. But this is showing that Nick Fuentes absolutely hated Charlie Kirk. And I think this is deplorable behavior, and Nick Fuentes absolutely chilled the fuck out after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I think he realized how insane he was about this. So just listen to just a little clip of this.
I think a lot of people are starting to find out Charlie Kirk is not the patriot that he says he is. And so I look at what happened last night, and I think to myself, this is totally a doable operation. You know, Charlie Kirk in the grand scheme of things is just some retarded idiot. The dog is terrified. I had to go upstairs and reassure him because I'm screaming at my screen, calling Charlie Kirk a bitch and everything. The contrast could not be more clear. Charlie Kirk is a totally unexceptional human being. A moral struggle that's happening on the higher dimension, right? Which is Christ versus the devil. Who does Charlie Kirk serve? You know, is he really a Christian? Is he really Christ-like when he supports foreign wars and Israel and all this? Look at the people he's taking money from. You know, so the guy's a fake Christian. The guy's not a patriot. He hates our country. He's un-American. Let's focus all our firepower on Charlie Kirk. Why are we doing this? It's because Charlie Kirk...
Anyway, you get the idea, not the point. The point that I'm trying to make is they absolutely hated each other. Tucker Carlson had him on his show. Tucker Carlson, essentially on his show, called out Charlie Kirk, which was weird.
How do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all, George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I can just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody.
So no one was a bigger Christian Zionist than Charlie Kirk, I think, ever. In the history of, well, probably not ever. I think Jesus was a bigger Christian Zionist than Charlie Kirk. But aside from him, I think Charlie Kirk was probably one of the most well-known Christian Zionists. And it's wild. It's absolutely wild. So anyway, this is essentially calling Charlie a heretic who he despised and stuff. Now, anyway, I wanted to show you all this to understand exactly what the discourse is surrounding Charlie Kirk and his assassination. Now, my opinion is very simple. My opinion is, let this man rest. Okay? He was murdered by a radical leftist. Okay? You do what you can. Become a man of God. What is a Christian Zionist? That just means a Christian that thinks Israel has the right to exist. You know, be a man of God, fight for what you believe in, speak, and just let this man rest. Let him rest. Let him rest. Try to make our country a better place. You know, make our country better, make our family better, make ourselves better. I feel like that's how you honor this guy. It's not literally just infinite message leaking and obfuscating. I think that every single one of these guys that's leaking these infinite messages of Charlie Kirk, they all make him look bad, to be clear, because they're private messages. They were never meant to be public, and this is wild. Now, if you want to investigate the murder, that's fine. I respect that. Investigate the murder. Sure. We want to know the result. We want to know what actually happened, obviously. But to come out here and be like, I saw in a dream that he was betrayed and it was Trump that killed him, and we know that he was killed by Trump because Trump gave him a holiday. It's like, this is absolutely deplorable shit. This is truly pathetic as fuck. Anyway, Turkey Tom made a video, the Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs files. So let's talk about the actual most likely killer, and let's see what this is all about. Let's see the private life of the actual most likely killer. Tyler Robinson is probably the killer, you know, because we saw him on the roof with video footage, also with eyewitness testimony. Also, it was his gun. Also, it was his fingerprints. Also, it was his DNA. Also, he admitted it. And Lance Twiggs is the gay, furry, transgender boyfriend that is currently missing.
I'd like to start this video by saying that I'm a little bit out of my depth.
I'm saying probably because he's not convicted, but the chances is that it's him, like 99%.
Here, considering the gravity of what I'm about to show you guys, but I'm gonna try my best. With that out of the way, let's get a few basic facts straight.
All right, let's do it. What a nightmare. Dude, I miss this man so much, it's crazy. And it's so annoying watching all these people just shit on his legacy in order to win brownie points in the culture war. You know, just literally manipulating him constantly. It's just sad. It's just sad. You know, like, look, you hate Israel. You're going to try to manipulate Charlie Kirk to make believe he secretly hated Israel. Or, you know, you liked Israel, and now you're trying to manipulate Charlie Kirk to kick the anti-Israel guys out of the movement. Both bad. I'm sorry, both bad. The infighting that came from Charlie Kirk's assassination is the last thing he would have wanted. Charlie Kirk, if you think about it, he knew that Tucker Carlson was anti-Israel, and he still invited him to his shows because the thing that he actually cared about was unity. Except for with Nick Fuentes. He hated Nick Fuentes. But aside from that, he wanted unity. And now there's this massive rift, and it's just sad. And that's why you have me, a blue retard on the internet, and also a Jew, which invalidates all of my opinions. All right, let's just go. But I think it's just really, really sad. I think he was a great man, and he inspired millions. And I think, honestly, I'm just thankful to God that we got to have him for the few years that we did.
Date is September 10th, 2025. Charlie Kirk transgender romantic partner named Lance Twiggs.
That's right, trans furry boyfriend. Yep, these guys are radical left freaks. And they all celebrated his death. Dude, we have an enemy that we know is our enemy that wants us all killed. And you have retards like fucking Candace Owens being like, well, actually, I don't care about radical left terrorists that are threatening my life. Because it was revealed to me in a dream.
Tyler is arrested, Lance cooperates with the police, and then disappears from the public eye.
Well, now he didn't just disappear, now he's like actually gone.
13 days later, I released a video going over all of the publicly available information about Tyler and Lance. Articles, witness testimony, Lance's TikTok and Reddit accounts, and I thought that was it. But then I received a message. This message was from a third party who was close to both of them and remained in contact for 6 years up until the attack took place. They reached out to me, providing never-before-seen information on the lead-up to what happened. To my knowledge, the only other people who have this are the FBI. Now, as I go over this information...
But we're actually getting secret messages behind the fucking degenerate, furry, far radical left killer from YouTube commentary channels. This is what I am talking about. This is why independent media is absolutely amazing. Bro. All right, dude, everyone in chat is currently debating Christian Zionism and stuff. All right, we're not doing that. All right, we're doing something else now. That is not the topic for today. Everyone has the right to their own opinion. I have mine, obviously. And it's not relevant because I'm not Christian. But anyway, moving on.
You'll notice that some of it is redacted, but I've redacted it myself with the exclusive intention to preserve the anonymity of both this person and other people who are named, who have nothing to do with Tyler's crime. Now keep in mind, these claims are being made by an anonymous leaker. There could be more to certain events that we're simply not aware of, and other details that may explain more of the story. Additionally, some of this video is my opinion and should be treated as such. But I've done my best to provide you all with the information I'm able to share to the extent it can be verified. In his first message to me, this person said, "Hello, I just watched your video on the Charlie Kirk assassin Tyler and thought you did a good job. I happen to know Tyler and Lance in real life. I don't take a lot of pictures, so I can't prove it very well, but I am in Discord servers where both of them are, including the one where Tyler posted his confession. I have some..."
You hear that, people in chat that are making believe he never confessed? He confessed. You're wrong. He confessed multiple times.
Pictures of the apartments and some stories I can tell. There were 2 pictures attached underneath. One of Tyler's confession in the Discord chat that matched the ones published by Ken Klippenstein, which were then republished by every major news outlet. The other picture is a completely original photo of local police at Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs' place, taken from across the street. For the sake of verification, he later...
It sounds somewhat legit.
Also provided me with archives of the 3 Discord servers they shared, which I'll eventually go over the relevant parts of. Once this person's identity was verified, he proceeded to tell me about the state of Tyler and Lance's living space. The apartment would drastically shift from clean to super dirty, depending on the state of Lance's mood. I don't have too many pictures of most of the mess, but basically, he'd start living in the living room and just start turning it into his nest. After the first roommate moved out, and right after Tyler moved in like 2 weeks later, Lance had a really big breakdown. The living room went from a place guests
Dude, they're all fucking crazies, man. They're crazy.
Came over to something that had to be hid. People still came over, but everyone got weirded out by all the trash. He basically had layers of wires, random trinkets, decorations, random art projects, clothes, and empty alcohol containers everywhere. And if anyone touched it, he would get livid.
Yeah, that sounds like a very mentally unwell man that thinks he's a woman and also a furry. Yep, no one's surprised here.
Friend got banned from the apartment for a while because he kept touching the Temu trinkets. I wish I still had pictures, but I felt sort of guilty and deleted them since I knew Lance wasn't in the right state of mind. For context, I've been playing games with Lance and Tyler for—
You mean to tell me that this person who's a transgender furry is not of sound mind? Well, color me surprised. Okay, I personally did not see that coming.
Like 6 years. I count myself kind of close to them, but I was trying to separate them from myself because being around them wasn't good for me. I say them, but Tyler was always level-headed and easygoing. But Lance could be anywhere from too depressed to talk to manic, wide-eyes, crazy person. I'll take a brief moment here to comment on the fact that in my original video, this is more or less the impression that I had, judging exclusively from Lance's more significant and expressive online presence relative to Tyler's almost non-existent digital paper trail. From Lance's Reddit account and the things his family members had to say about him, he clearly was more outspoken and in some ways unstable. There were Reddit posts of his mentioning being at odds with his family to the point of being kicked out, and—
You mean to tell me that a trans furry guy, gay, you mean to tell me that that person did not get along well with his family?
He had also discussed a lot of substance abuse issues, which are a far—
Dude, it's so obviously a mental illness, dude. The trans topic is like so cooked.
cry from the quiet, even if uneasy relationship that Tyler seemed to have with his family. What was completely unknown, and as far as I know, hasn't been published anywhere, is this combination of hoarding and mania that this person describes Lance as exhibiting. The messages continue.
Bro, this dude thinks he's another gender. Well, obviously he has mania.
During this first nest phase, Lance started working very rarely. He worked with his dad for a tub repair company. They'd either repair tubs or install them at construction sites. But when Lance was super depressed or just too manic, he'd take the day off and hit his THC vape, drink, and scroll reels. Anyway,
Great! He was a massive weeb type guy that was just sitting there vaping weed. He was just a druggy guy. Dude, this is so sad. I feel so bad for like these people. A druggy doom scroller. Many such cases. Dude, take care of your children, man. What happened?
2 weeks before Lance's first nest phase, when the apartment was mostly normal, Tyler moved in with Lance because he just dropped out of college and was tired of living with his
Right, Tyler's this alleged killer.
parents. He had been
Send your kids to college as a normal Mormon kid. Like, that's who he was. That's the family he came from. A normal Mormon kid goes to college. A few years later, he's out there having surprise butt sex with a trans furry, and moving out of his parents' house because obviously they're too bigoted to get. They wouldn't understand him. They're too bigoted. They're too bigoted. He understands things like being wholesome, and then he goes and seemingly murders an innocent man in front of his family.
Working with his dad at a stone cutting business where they'd install countertops. Tyler was kind of your normal blue-collar Utah guy. Most conversations with him, he'd talk hunting, camping, gaming, and he loved to talk about fishing. Now, first off,
dude came from a normal family, and this fucking shit happened to him. Dude, pay attention, bro. Pay attention to what's happening.
Combination of depressants with cognitive stimulants are leading factors to severe anxiety, paranoia, depression, and even psychosis. And that's without mentioning the documented connection between weed and schizophrenia. Obviously, as I assume most of you know, weed basically has two components, THC and CBD. CBD is not psychoactive, and it's often associated with treatments for anxiety, pain, and inflammation. Meanwhile, THC is psychoactive, and despite it also having some therapeutic uses in the treatment of nausea and side effects of chemotherapy, THC is the component of marijuana that's associated with symptoms like paranoia, psychosis, and, like previously mentioned, schizophrenia. Now, obviously, the vast majority of stoners or casual smokers are not exhibiting these symptoms. This is not a typical thing. But in certain people who are predisposed, THC can absolutely trigger a sort of psychotic meltdown, or it can compound with other mental health issues to make them just much, much worse. In Lance's case, it sounds like he was using...
That's classic weed, bro. It's what people... You're depressed, so you smoke weed, and smoking weed makes you more depressed. And you're more depressed, so you smoke more weed. That is incredibly classic, bro. Like, dude, again, I am a big believer in freedom and stuff like that in general, but I don't think weed is good for you, and I don't think any of you should be doing it. Like, if you could avoid it. Like, that shit is it's a crutch, and it's not healthy. This whole subduing your own mental state, you know, this whole subduing your mental state in order to keep going, like, it's sad. It's really sad. You could get highs through much healthier ways, like, you know, meditation and spirituality, as cringe as that sounds. I'm not a huge fan, personally. Yeah, I know a lot of people that do it. I don't think it's good for you, obviously.
Way too much pot, while simultaneously drinking heavily and scrolling reels. If there's any way someone can derive psychosis and mania from first principles, this is definitely up there. Now, in my original video about this topic, I mentioned that there were two specific periods of change for Lance and Tyler by extension. The first was 2020, when the pandemic hit, locking everyone inside their houses and apartments, and therefore driving them to spend a lot more time on the old computer. And as the Discord logs are going to show later, it's probably when Lance and Tyler started to communicate the most frequently, even if they were already gaming and talking prior. The second period was during 2024, which is when Tyler moved into the apartment with Lance. And as their anonymous peer here is saying, within 2 weeks of Tyler being there, Lance began his nest phase, as he puts it. Funnily enough, the one other instance I've ever heard of making a nest in your living room comes from Theo Vaughn talking about what he did during of the white dust kind of stimulus.
Of course, it's a druggy shit, man. It's a druggy thing. Absolutely.
If you know what I mean.
I remember that. I'll make a nest in my living room, dude. Boy.
And more than anything else you can think of.
Turn you into a damn owl, homie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You'll be out on your own porch, you know?
Yeah.
While this description is obviously played up in its context, it's actually a pretty common experience to start hoarding while in states of paranoid mania, which is what Lance appeared to be going through. From his Reddit history, we know that Lance used to be a big fan of Jordan Peterson, who is widely...
Bro! No! He used to be a fan of Jordan Peterson. He goes to college. He ends up becoming a radical leftoid. No! That's the thing about people like Jordan Peterson. He was so close. He was so close to grabbing people out of the clutches of Satan. He tried so hard. He didn't get this one. Oh my God, what a nightmare. Peterson is a lefty? Yeah, not last I checked, but okay.
known as the clean your room guy, repeatedly harping on how
he definitely became a little bit wacky as time went on, but he definitely tried. He inspired a lot of people. He was the big clean your room guy. Yeah.
Your living space reflects your psyche. If this leaker is telling the truth, then it would make sense that as Lance's mental state deteriorated, so did the physical space around him. With all of that information regarding Lance being corroborated by these messages, we also have the reveal that Tyler had dropped out of college and decided of his own volition to move out. In my original video, we had the information that he was in an electrical apprenticeship program at Dixie Technical College. But based on these messages, it seems he dropped out and was just working at a masonry business with his dad. Again, this matches the picture of Tyler that one can derive from all of the testimonies regarding what kind of person he was. So after about 5 years or so of being friends with Lance, he decides to move in with him. But at this point, there's no sign that the two are engaged in a romantic relationship. Their peer continues. I felt super bad when he first moved in with Lance because it was normal for like 2 weeks, and then Lance went nuts, and the entire downstairs just became his
You mean to tell me that the one that went crazy was the trans guy? What?
nest. He'd be doing experiments in the kitchen, which were mostly just growing mold in Tupperware mugs, and the kettle with random trinkets and rocks submerged in them. Every once in a while, I'd try to have a talk with Lance and try to get him to realize he needed help without making him go ballistic. Now, this is actually bizarre. One of the things I didn't pay that much attention to in my first video about this was that Lance made 2 posts regarding growing fungi, one of them in arse mushroom growers, and another one of them in arse shrooms. However, they were very brief non sequiturs that didn't at all give the impression of how deeply invested Lance was into growing mushrooms, which apparently he was, at least during his episodes. The interest in mushrooms peaking when Lance is at his craziest reminds me of the Cult of the Lamb cordyceps that takes over one of the characters and makes him want to grow more mushrooms.
Well, actually, that's what the cordyceps fungus does in real life. The cordyceps fungus is a real fungus that exists that latches onto, like, usually insects, and it kind of turns them into zombies. Like, it actually zombifies them. It takes them over and gets them to basically spread their fungus everywhere. It's terrifying. But that's not even the point. All right, that's not even the point.
This is extremely strange behavior, but my personal autism aside, the messages continue. I'm not going to say
I mean, I don't think he got fucking zomboided. I just think that this is a guy that got absolutely mind-fucked by college and doubled on top of college and random cringe shit around him, and probably personal mental illnesses and depression that he was just kind of sitting with. He just decided to, instead of actually find a way to work through it, he just absolutely layered himself with infinite drugs, and it just completely fucking destroyed him. It turned him into a freak.
Was all just him being insane. His mom is super Mormon and also kind of crazy, so there's that. And good. All of the drugs. Weed, LSD, shrooms, DMT, and I think he said Molly, but I'm not sure. Also, alcoholic levels of alcohol. Lance has always been a little weird and quirky, but never really crazy. He was constantly arguing with his mom every time he saw her, and then ranting about Republicans and Mormons when he got home. I'd sometimes talk with him for like 4 hours of him just ranting about his mom and family. Okay. He really hates Mormons. Also, at the time, politically, Lance and I would both probably describe ourselves as libertarian, and Tyler was very apolitical. On his Reddit account, there is one relatively old post about Lance having substance abuse problems, and you could assume that due to him no longer posting about it, he no longer struggled with it. Apparently, it was the opposite, as over time, it only got worse. And it's really the mention here of DMT that stands out to me. While the other drugs are bad enough and can permanently damage your brain, especially in combination with each other, even people who like DMT will tell you about how careful you have to be about using it, even if you try your best to do it in a therapeutic setting. But clearly, Lance was in no state of mind to manage his substance intake in any way that resembled healthy. It almost freaks me out how easily someone like Lance could get his hands on that kind of thing.
Honestly, completely true. Completely true. There's so little actual protection of stuff like this, you know? There's so little protection from people getting their hands on this crap. What a nightmare. Dude actually just melted his brain and was just able to get away with doing that. It's super easy to get drugs. It really is. It really is. It's insanely easy. Dude, you go to like a shady grocery store and you look at the guy and the guy just like nods at you and you're like, why are you nodding at me? It's like, oh, you're not here to buy? And you're like, well, no. What do you mean buy? What are we buying? You know, it's like, it's super common. I wouldn't know where to find any of this stuff. Unfortunately, it's really easy.
being completely out of his mind for months on end. This set of messages also confirm another suspicion of mine expressed in the first video. Prior to 2024, neither Lance nor Tyler were particularly political, as they only ever expressed opinions that could be loosely classified as socially liberal, which most young Zoomers are by default anyway. However, this changed suddenly and drastically during the year that they lived together. He had his nest phase for probably 3 to 4 months before he sort of went back to normal. But at the tail end of his nest phase, after we had both talked for a while, he told me he was trans, and that it wouldn't change anything, and that I could even use whatever pronouns, and he wouldn't care.
So let me get this straight. He came out as trans after melting his brain. Wow. That's crazy. It's probably a coincidence, honestly.
The next week and a half, the living room got dismantled. He vacuumed and cleaned the kitchen a bit, but he still kept one mold experiment outside for some reason. It was kind of relieving to not see so much trash lying around. We weren't allowed to toss even the most mundane trash like napkins and Taco Bell sauce packets, which there was an entire drawer of, so seeing all the cans and bottles disappear was super nice. Whenever we came over, people commented on how it's nice that we could hang out without being scared of accidentally touching trash or a trinket and having Lance freak out. We'd have a mostly weekly Magic the Gathering night at the apartment where everyone would come drink, get high, and play Magic. Lance started attending again after he became mostly normal. It's interesting to see that him identifying as trans came while he was in his nesting phase, but he maintained it after it had ended. It does startle me a bit how basically all of Lance's friend group, who frequently visited Lance and Tyler's house, just kind of tolerated this going on for months.
Well, why does this surprise you? Were they supposed to question his pronouns? Were they supposed to tell him that he doesn't feel valid? Like, do you understand how insane this is, dude? Like, you have to understand the insanity, bro. Like, they tell you not to get these people help because they're perfect the way they are. They tell you to affirm their delusions instead of telling them that they're fucking retarded, alright? Like, dude, you could look at this guy for 2 seconds in the hat with these eyes and you know that this guy's fucking crazy. If you were a real friend and an honest person, and you weren't captured by this bullshit fake empathy, you would fucking kick his ass. You'd check him into therapy, man. You'd fucking lock him in rehab. Truth comes first, man. If you actually love someone, you tell them the truth. You don't tolerate and affirm their delusions.
I have no idea how it's possible to put up with a situation so clearly deranged for that long, but hey, different strokes for different folks. Now, it's this next set of messages that I find really interesting. Between all of his turns while playing Magic, Lance would go hang out with Tyler, and we'd have to call him to the tables every time it was his turn. One of my gym buddies was the first to pick up on Tyler and Lance being really close. I was in denial for months because I thought Tyler was straight, and also I kind of did not want it to be true. Eventually, I kind of snapped out of it like the nth time I saw them asleep, cuddling on the couch. I kind of didn't think too much of it since Lance would get super cuddly every time he got drunk, which is how I think they got together, because I'm pretty sure Tyler was a virgin when he moved in. So probably when Lance was in the cuddly mood, probably something happened. But that's just my guess. This is where a lot of things start clicking together. Tyler, an introverted gamer who, as far as anyone could tell, had no prior relationships of any significance, spent 4 months living with his best friend, Lance, who apparently got overly cuddly with everyone while drunk, and simultaneously had the proclivity to drink too often. It's not surprising that this was the outcome of a touch-starved virgin gamer living in the same house as a touchy-feely, seemingly manic trans person.
Yeah.
However, a while after Lance had mostly gone back to normal, things...
So it's crazy how it's the more normal seeming one that ended up becoming seemingly the killer.
Started to intensify again. I started noticing changes in Lance's political views as the presidential election got closer. He amped up the complaints
The trumpeting, baby. It's the trumpeting.
Of old people staring at him, which probably was because he dressed like a stone.
Dude, are you crazy? Of course, obviously. This guy went crazy. This guy was nice and quiet, and his boyfriend was a fucking manic psycho trans furry freak. I'm not saying he was groomed or anything, but I am saying his boyfriend was a trans psycho demented furry freak.
And not because he was female presenting, because all he did in that department was grow out his hair and wear mascara every once in a while. He also hated that the construction workers would misgender him, which I thought was weird since he said he was fine with any pronoun. Tyler wouldn't really get political until after the election. He'd sometimes just casually bring up the latest thing Trump had done and complain about what it'd do to the country, but in a very level-headed way. Before the election, Lance's friend group was the quirky LGBT group with a lot of mental illnesses. politics. Not saying the two are linked, but that's how my friends knew them. They're the people who are in Lance's server for the most part. After the election, they became a lot more political, but not to an extremist level. By this point, I could safely say Lance and Tyler were some flavor of left-wing, while I'd become tired of politics and mostly apolitical, but never
Mostly apolitical. He goes on a roof and shoots a conservative guy. Level-headed guys.
anything I thought was like dangerous. At some point, they told me about their relationship and were pretty open about it after that. It became very uncomfortable for me because while I don't think of myself as homophobic, seeing two dudes constantly make out was a bit much.
Listen, I'm not getting into the whole Leviticus drama over here. We're not doing Leviticus lore, but if you read into Leviticus, yeah, it'll make you uncomfortable a little bit. Check out Leviticus for any more details on gay butt sex.
Also, since Lance's room was always super messy, they would bang in Tyler's room, and I didn't like hearing it.
Well, that's
I cannot
gross.
imagine how much it sucked to be in this guy's shoes. While this is a bit out of character for Tyler, who's been consistently described as reserved, it does match Lance's behavior of being overly transparent and letting other people, even people who randomly visited him, see into his intimate life to a point where it's concerning. It's also fitting that Lance's pre-existent paranoid behaviors were now manifesting in correlation to his gender, as despite not being particularly female presenting or being concerned with being seen and treated as a woman, he still took issue with anyone who perceived him as a man. People who are
These people are fucking crazy! That's why you nipped it in the bud, man! That's why you nip it in the bud immediately! Oh my god, stop! That's why you nip it in the bud. That's why you nip it in the bud. Because it's people are delusional and violent. It's not a coincidence that there's so many overwhelming amount of trans killers. Bro.
paranoid often assume others look upon them negatively, no matter how asinine the reason may be. Clearly, Lance's mental state was deteriorating, and whether intentionally or not, he was dragging Tyler along with him. And this became increasingly transparent over time. Their mutual acquaintance continues. Lance started becoming more and more erratic again until, at the end of December, he just had another nuclear meltdown after having another argument. Also, a couple months before, we noticed Lance had been growing breasts and said that he'd been taking
Bro, dude, these people, they fucking listen, guys. If they castrate themselves and they tell you to abort your children, so how do they breed? They breed like vampires!
black market HRT, which
The guy got fucking hormone shit on the black market to grow titties. Man, protect your kids, dude. They're crazy. These are crazy people. These are crazy. This is a mental illness. Oh, come on. Are we kidding me? Dude, I remember after Charlie Kirk got assassinated and people were talking about this trans guy, and then you got some lefties actually mad that we were misgendering Lance Twiggs. This absolute fucking freak.
I do not know what that entailed, but I think it was making him very erratic. So he basically shut down for like 2 weeks, not talking, just hitting his vapes in the living room in the dark. So here we have the mention of possibly one of the most concerning details about what kind of substances Lance was on at this point in time. Taking synthetic hormones of any kind, whether the kind and quantity your body already produces or not, is extremely dangerous and can cause pretty much every kind of health issue imaginable, including mental. Even if you're a guy and you take just a little bit of testosterone, you can suffer all kinds of side effects. So obviously, in Lance's case, the risks are much greater by default, and it's made exponentially more dangerous given the circumstances. This is someone who has proven himself to be delusional, chronically sleep deprived, and prone to overdoing substances. There is simply no chance he was mentally well enough to manage and administer dosages of any kind, let alone procure or produce untainted bathtub HRT. While studies on this stuff are hard to come by, there have been a few documented cases of people in similar situations to Lance. For example, there's one case of a person in their early 20s with a history of depression and psychosis who self-induced drug intoxication via HRT, which led
Dude, what are we doing? What are we doing? What is society becoming? Bathtub HRT, bro.
to a worsening of their psychosis and all of their other psychiatric disorders.
Like, dude, this is the most obvious thing in the world, man. You know, this is literally the most obvious shit in the universe. And it's like, what, really? 40% of them kill themselves or try to kill themselves? Yeah, they're crazy people. Again, I have nothing, you don't understand. I have love in my heart for these people, okay? I do. I really do. I think every single person is made in the image of God. Now, these people are castrating themselves and contorting that image, which is the most demonic thing ever. But this is so tragic. These are people that have been manipulated either by society or just because they're mentally retarded themselves. And this shit's happening. Yes, there are psychos, streamers, by the way, large streamers that are out there trying to convince kids to take bathtub HRT and sell them and stuff. These are like known things, and they're not even getting banned on platforms for stuff like this. This is so sad. It's so sad. Like, these people need major help, not affirming their retardation. Then 40% of them kill themselves.
Uncoincidentally, this is when Lance becomes more unhinged than ever before, as his peer continues to allege. I thought he kind of started going back to normal after that because he started talking again, but I was so wrong. I had another magic night at the end of January, so even though Lance wasn't completely fine, I just kind of did it to test the waters. I should have guessed because the nest was starting to form again. He was watching Doctor Who in the living room, and so I thought if he was just doing that, he'd be fine. But people started to show up and talk before we started, and he just started yelling at us from the other room to shut up, which we thought was a joke since this was standard magic night procedure. He yelled again, and then we got quiet until enough people showed up to start a game. During the game, one of my more autistic friends started to bring up transgenders and—
Dude, it is actually like a fucking autistic circle of retards that are sitting there every night and affirming each other's mental issues, because obviously you can't call them out. You have to just go with the flow, right? Every time they say I'm retarded for X reason, you have to completely support it and believe it.
Sports. He literally couldn't get any further than those two words before Lance yelled at him to shut up from the other room. And
bro! Dude got violent off someone saying, thoughts on trans people in women's sports? Bro fucking lost his mind after that one. Bro jumped higher than Hassan Piker's dog.
To everyone's amazement, he tried to bring it up like 3 more times in rapid succession, being shouted down literally not even a second after he started his sentence every time. It became a very awkward game. It's pretty—
Dude crashed the fuck out. And you're telling me that these aren't violent people? No, this isn't autism, all right? This is a violent streak. This is actual psychosis. And these people are pumping themselves full of drugs. Like, what are we talking about?
funny to think back on now. Bro could not take a hint. After that, more people showed up, and we started having 2 games going, and the mood mostly stabilized, and Lance just came in with sort of a loopy grin and a bottle of something. I'll summarize this part briefly since this person goes into a bit of detail about what happened, but Lance proceeded to throw this guy's extra rare magic cards around to try and get his attention, and afterwards, he went upstairs, at which point everyone started hearing loud thumping. Apparently, Lance had gone into a temper tantrum so intense that he was literally thrashing around on the floor, which hopefully was just a tantrum and not some kind of seizure, because at this point, Lance is really a prime candidate for that to happen. Their peer continues. After that, Lance went mental. I'd get to Lance and Tyler's place, and he'd be super wide-eyed with either a loopy grin or a rictus grin like the Joker, depending on his mood. The nest came—
Yep, that guy seems normal. I would trust him. Honestly, I would trust him. I'd be his boyfriend. If I was his boyfriend, I would totally love that. Yeah, absolutely. Except I'm not gay. That's the only caveat. Oh well. Oh well.
Came back full force, and Lance started living downstairs full time again. This is a picture of a kind of cleaned up version. Imagine this type of mess, but denser and all over the living room and kitchen counters. He started playing on his DS and drawing stuff in, I think, Pitcho chat, and scribbling it all out while giggling with the wide-eyed Joker smile. He'd either be—
And this guy was dating him. Like, I feel like we should know that this guy was a psycho. Like, this guy should have been in an asylum, right? Like, dude was living in Asmongold's house, all right? We should know that this guy should be in an asylum. Like, dude, all these people have their super fucking mega technology, Palantir, all that crap, or where everyone knows exactly what everyone's doing. Dude, Google knows what your search history is, or they're fucking advertising to you stuff based on stuff you think about. Or you think about dog toys and you get an ad for dog toys, okay? All right, you don't understand. They are so fucking invasive, and they couldn't tell that this dude was gonna be a threat to society. Oh my god.
Doing this, or his experiments, or talking with ChatGPT day in and day out.
Oh,
he
great.
hardly ever slept.
So ChatGPT knew about this. Like, come on. At some point, ChatGPT needs to make sure this guy's not gonna kill somebody. What are we doing?
The experiments got scarier too. Like jugs of water with a whisk full of aluminum foil that had 2 copper wires coming out of them. The water was clear
40%.
one day, and at some point, I think the wires got plugged into the outlet because the water turned brown and the aluminum foil was pretty burnt. He also started leaving little papers around the house that he had scribbled on while doing that giggling thing. It's at this point that our leaker here sent an extensive set of pictures he'd taken of the state of the apartment and the notes Lance left around. First is an image of their magic table, completely vandalized with garbage that mostly resembles electrical stuff, which is odd because Tyler was the one in an electrical apprenticeship program, not Lance. In the background, we can see what looks to be some kind of aquarium or big glass container with rocks in it, which may be the mold experiments mentioned in the messages. Underneath it is what looks to be a package for a rock tumbler, which makes sense given that Tyler occasionally did masonry with his dad. But it's when we move to what's actually on the table that things get increasingly bizarre. And we have isolated pictures of all of the particularly interesting items. I'm gonna say right now that I'm actually a specialist in literally nothing, so this is just gonna be me trying to interpret these to the best of my abilities. And the screenshots I'll be looking at will be made available in the description for those of you who want to take a look for yourself and see if you can extract some sense out of the madness of Lance's post-it notes. The first one we'll go over is this one, which contains a set of spiral-like scribbles that may be disconnected attempts at making the Glock logo, given the squared spiral G and the word lock near it. Right above this, there's also what looks to be the small phrase E equals T, and elsewhere on the note, I can also make out the words regent and temp, although I have no idea if this is alluding to any
Make asylums great again. MAGA, make asylums great again.
Anything in particular. On the right side of the image, another post-it has the sentence all of separate underneath what looks to be the portmanteau no linguals. This is very rough to make out, obviously, but bilingual means that someone knows 2 languages. Monolingual means that someone knows 1. Therefore, no lingual would mean someone who knows no languages or someone who is nonverbal. The next set of scribbles is a bit more cohesive, although I'm using that word pretty loosely here at this point. Here we can see stop looking for others at the top and Terraria Buggin Tear Ableist in the middle, which I think may be some wordplay with terrible and ableist. At the bottom of this page, an illustrated version of the word sine wave is written above lose it at the tude, next to a picture of some bizarre looking animal. This at the tude bit to me is very reminiscent of how schizophrenic people will break words down and obsess with syllables, word morphology, and
Bro, Terraria is like a fucking, it's a video game. I don't know why.
And portmanteaus. There's another example of this in one.
I mean, that kind of looks like, what is that? Bugging terriblest?
At the page, an illustrated version of the word looking animal. This
okay, whatever. He's played some video game shit. I don't care. Anyway.
Down and obsessed with syllables, word morphology, and portmanteaus. There's another example of this in one of the post-it notes where he writes, I'm alone.
Yeah, which obviously means I'm alone.
Obviously doing.
Bro, this is gonna be what Candace Owens' journal looks like.
What I'm talking about here. On another page, we have Monsumus Sumptuous right at the top, followed by TU Piteous, which
yes, shut the fuck up, idiots.
I assume is like shut the flip up, idiots, maybe. Further down the page, there's a rough.
Sounds like this person who's a completely normal member, functioning member of society, transgender, and obviously should be respected. Seems like a complete fucking psycho schizo, actually.
Sketch of America with the number 21.0 inside of it, and nearby phrases like go to the store and small box go listen to act. A lot of this stuff reads like Lance is just writing his mundane thoughts or whatever he's seeing on his phone in the most cryptic and insane way possible, but some of it does stand out to me as potentially meaningful or at least consistent. On a post-it note, he writes down TY and miss my BF, obviously in reference to Tyler. On another one, we have stop crying, stop stopping, and in one of the pages, we have the phrase full stop, very jagged at the bottom. Although this may be bull.
Hey, that looks like bullshit.
Or
yeah, that looks like bullshit to me, but all right, whatever.
Something else. On this page, there's something.
And the fact that we didn't feel the need to like lock this person up or check up on him or anything. It's insane. It's crazy. It's so sad. Now Charlie Kirk's dead, man. What are we doing?
Pretty interesting, as the words federated and fed-related are right next to what looks to be the word CIA. And further down, a drawing of 4 symbols that ever so slightly resemble what you'd see on a set of Zener cards. If you're not familiar with what these are, Zener or Zener cards were created in the early 20th century to test if people had extrasensory perception, and much later on, they were frequently reported as being used in gifted and talented education programs. There are a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding this topic, some of them being more credible than others, but they typically have to do with the CIA project MKUltra, and how Gates may be some kind of offshoot of it. I won't get into the merits of these theories, not only because Wendigoon should be the one to do that, but also because it doesn't really matter as much as the reason why people are drawn to this topic online in the first place. You see, if you check on Reddit, the majority of people who engage in discussions about the nature of gate programs are people
This is like an obvious psycho.
who were in gate themselves, obviously, meaning they were, at some point, considered to be gifted. You may have already heard about this, but there's a sizable phenomenon of gifted kid burnout, where people who used to be overachievers in their childhood, usually in the academic sense, could no longer keep up as they got older, and so their life spiraled out of control. Part of this phenomenon...
The reason why that happens mostly is because you're used to everything getting handed to you on a silver platter, and then you end up in an environment where you actually have to work and you have zero work ethic. That is actually the most likely thing that causes it, for the record.
Phenomenon is that when they can't get over their attachment to how they were treated when they were seen as special, they come up with all sorts of extraneous reasons to justify their decline and convince themselves that they're still gifted in some way. Given that Lance is quite literally documented on video as a gifted kid, being an adept piano player from a young age, and his life definitely went downhill as he got older, it would make sense for Lance, in one of his weed, paranoia, alcohol, and hallucinogen real maxing binges, to stumble upon this stuff while doom scrolling and decide to scribble about it.
Maybe.
This notion that Lance is still attached to the idea he's special or somehow intellectually gifted is later corroborated by this anonymous peer. But even just examining his projects, Lance clearly thinks he's doing something here. Among the incoherent scribbles, there's hot glue and electrical
I bet you Lance. Again, I don't know, but I would not be surprised at all if Lance knew that this shit was happening, bro. I knew that. There's no way. Like, come on. Come on. This is like complete fucking psycho, radical leftist whack job.
Wiring and batteries, which leads me to suspect he actually
Hang it in the Louvre. They have space now.
Believed he was putting something together. And maybe some of these scribbles are, at least in his delusional mind, blueprints or rough sketches. At least some of his drawings had symbols that resembled electrical circuit diagrams, some even written on books about electrical stuff like impedance phenomena, while others had mathematical symbols as if he was writing down equations. Although, of course, none of it actually
Yeah,
made
this sounds like a complete retard whack job that should have been put away a lot earlier than he was.
Any sense to me or probably you. I will say some of this stuff legitimately gets pretty scary. To think that this guy melted his own brain to the point where he was drawing this is horrifying. Besides the consistent appearance of circuit
And
diagrams,
his friends all knew this was happening to him, and no one said anything because you're going to tell him not to accept him for who he is? You're going to tell him that actually maybe he's delusional? You're not accepting him for his new gender or whatever? Understand how insane this is?
like straight lines leading to symbols, and drawings and references to spirals and spiraling. There is one image in particular that really got my attention. On what looks to be two pieces of cardboard, Lance wrote, "Hormonal flux is way fluctuative," followed by definitely orchid denialism. If you don't know, orchid is actually the medical term for balls. So with the context here being him mentioning hormones and of course identifying as trans in the few months prior to Tyler's attack, orchid denialism could be a reference to him outright not acknowledging or recognizing his balls. I can't make any other conclusion besides that one, but as I said earlier, all of the images will be available for you to peruse. And although a lot of it is...
This dude turned his back on his body that was given to him by God, and it turned him into this fucking retard. Like, this was a relatively normal guy before he melted his brain going down this rabbit hole of drugs and cringe ideology.
Just random babble. I am hoping that by someone else other than I taking a look at this, there can be some information extracted from these images. The anonymous peer continues. These scribbles look bad, but it's even worse when you saw his face when he was doodling it, combined with the giggling and how vigorously he would scribble. It was very scary. And the way he spoke was weird. It was a bunch of words, but none of them made sense together, or sometimes it'd be in rhyme.
Could this be like the new MK Ultra? Like testing all this shit on these over-drugged trans fucks? Like, is that possible? Like, what are we doing? Because this is crazy. And the fact that no one did anything about this. And God knows how many... Like, we're only talking about this because this guy... We're only talking about this because this guy is the trans furry boyfriend of the guy that did possibly the most impactful assassination in our generation. Like, that's what we're talking about. How many more of these whack jobs are out there? How many of the people that are calling you a fascist behind their computer are doing this? Like, this is radical left whack job behavior. You have an over-medicated retard population, and they're violent as fuck. And then the demons are giggling in the background as they whisper into your ears to affirm their delusions instead of tell them that they're crazy.
Or just sometimes he'd only smile and point at things. If I was religious, I would have called an exorcist. The smile was so scary. And he showed me what conversations he was having with ChatGPT. He told me he solved some equation backwards and showed me the ChatGPT text as proof. The chats were just paragraphs of random Greek and I think Roman symbols with numbers and random letters going on and on. He'd somehow gotten it to respond in kind as well. He told me to start scrolling faster, and so I did. And he kept telling me faster until he was basically screaming at me to scroll fast.
There's a YouTuber interviewed a former Antifa member who said people who run Antifa plant people in the group to sell drugs. Yeah, I believe that. I think that was JD DeLay. Yeah, no, I know that for sure. Drugs are used for sure. That's why you have every kid is over-medicated. You know, every kid goes to school and essentially you have the teachers diagnosing them with all sorts of ADHD and shit. And, you know, they're sitting there and they're convincing everyone that they have ADHD and everyone's autistic now and all that. And then they drug them up. They fucking drug them.
And the ChatGPT chats just went on like forever. I was sat there scrolling at max.
If I would be a kid in public school today, I have no doubt in my mind my teacher would tell me I had ADHD and needed to be on some sort of medication. I have no doubt. Thank God my parents never gave me anything. But I have no doubt that absolutely they would have said that about me.
For at least...
Because I'm fucking crazy. Because I'm crazy. Not this crazy, but I'm crazy, dude.
Like a
because I have a personality. Having a personality, that's ADHD these days.
Or two, and by the bottom, it was still in the weird symbols. He started yelling at me that Nikola Tesla was abused by the people in his time, and that no one we knew was smart enough to solve that equation, including me, because he is way smarter than me. This was all in weird, broken up sentences too. Definitely added to the creepy factor. Tyler told me that Lance had basically been up for like 3 days straight talking to ChatGPT at that time.
And you don't put this man in an asylum? You don't get him help? Oh my God.
It's interesting that he mentions he'd get an exorcist if he was religious, because when I was going over Lance's Reddit posts, he talks about how once his family threw him out of the house, saying he was possessed by a demon. If this is what they were having to deal with, that becomes a lot more understandable. As far as the ChatGPT conversations in Latin and Greek, another common fixation of people who are schizophrenic is hermeneutics, the interpretation and analysis of biblical texts, often in their original language or as close to it as
that be Hebrew, baby. He's gonna talk about gematria. I'm gonna lose my mind.
Possible. There are huge online communities.
Gematria! There's no way, bro.
For esoteric and occult interpretations of the Bible revolving around sacred geometry or gematria, which
gematria, bro. Oh my God. For those of you that don't know what gematria is, it's basically every letter in the Hebrew language it corroborates with a number. Like the first letter corroborates with the number 1, and then the second letter is 2, etc. The 10th letter is 10, the 11th letter is 20. And they're so cool. Like, it's actually so cool. Like, for example, this is the most basic one. Hand in Hebrew is yad. That means hand. All right? That has a gematria of 14. And there are 14 bones in your hand. You know, like, oh my God, that's so cool. And there are so many of those. But yeah, no, that doesn't make you become a schizo demon-possessed freak that cuts your testicles off.
Given Lance's repeated use of broken maths in his notes and scribbles, may have contributed to his delusions here. Again, this doesn't mean that this was actually happening, but it's a decent guess as to why those 2 specific languages and equations keep popping up in Lance's activities, despite him showing no interest in foreign or dead languages elsewhere. The messages continue. He'd sometimes just be sobbing in Tyler's arms, and Tyler would be rocking him back and forth. We all thought Tyler was a trooper for putting up with Lance in that state.
Yeah, well, Tyler was not a trooper. I wonder how involved this boyfriend was in this assassination.
So the next image attached in these messages is one that I don't think I can show you guys on YouTube, but you will be able to check it for yourself in the description. But it's a used condom on the sink of the bathroom in the common area. We know this photo was taken in their apartment because the counter, sink, toilet, and other details match this photo of their sink taken from a Zillow listing. Yikes. The same applies to another photo of the table in their living room,
Yeah, this is
which
the
once
same
again
person.
matches the Zillow listing, as we
I
can
am
see that the
convinced
window
this
with
is
the
the
white
same guy.
blinds is in the same location. As nasty as this is to even take into consideration, it is worth noting that it is completely empty, which leads me to think that even if Tyler was still engaging with Lance in this way, it was more out of pity or a sense of duty than anything else. The anonymous peer says, crazily enough, while Lance was like that, Tyler was still hitting it. When I told Lance I would be leaving the general
Oh God, these hedonistic freaks, bro.
area, it was crazy. He snapped back to reality for a second and just thanked me for all the good times we had had hanging out throughout the years. After that, I think Lance had been brought back just a little bit, and he even let Tyler take him out of the house to start seeing a psychologist. It almost made me feel bad because, not gonna lie, I was starting to become really apathetic and not really care about what happened. Like, it was just so much energy to try and deal with Lance.
It's horrible.
Tyler was a real trooper for dealing with him. Lance even calmed
Yeah,
down
sure.
enough for us to hold like 3 more magic nights.
Dude, I hate when people are like this. Like, oh, he's a real trooper for dealing with his, crazy psycho trans boyfriend that he's fucking every day. It's like, no, he's not a trooper. If he was a trooper, he would get that person admitted into a ward. That is not a trooper.
We all thought Lance would be okay because he had Tyler, who was basically his handler at this point, to take care of him. Eventually, my friend who lived across the street from their apartment let me know that Lance had gotten into an argument with his grandpa, who owned the apartment, and his grandpa had taken his car away. This I'm not sure about, but I suspect it put him into another one of these spirals. I imagine Lance was just alone with Tyler in the apartment, just driving Tyler crazy. I'd be hard-pressed to stay sane while living alone with Lance while he's like that. I joined a couple Discord calls with Tyler and Lance, and
We lost the best of us to the worst of them. It's absolutely heartbreaking, man.
Lance would say one thing and then be silent, and Tyler would just talk normally. Tyler even joined a call 2 weeks before the assassination and acted completely normal. All of this is really interesting to me because while we did have an inkling that neither Tyler nor Lance were in their right mind by the time the attack took place, it seems like the situation was that Tyler was being subjected to an incessant barrage of genuinely psychotic ramblings from a paranoid and deranged Lance, who had recently become
Heartbreaking.
significantly more political. As is customary for people with these kinds of delusions, they start fixating on prominent people, imagining they have some
God.
specific relationship to that person, usually that they're being stalked or otherwise directly antagonized by them. This is probably when the name of Charlie Kirk entered the mix, and while it was
Oh
probably
my
just
God.
one among many
They might have been watching South Park. Like, I was just saying, like, no, and it's not South Park's fault, obviously. But, they're maybe watching South Park. See how he's a master debater and he's just shutting them down. He's just shutting down the libs, Oh my God. He's anti-trans. He's flamed as a bigot everywhere on television. This is horrible. And again, and the media environment basically made it super ripe for a random fucking retard to just go kill him. That's the worst part of it, man. It's just such a nightmare. It's such a nightmare. You call him a Nazi, a bigot, someone, he wants the trans Holocaust. And then you get these trans retard just go out and kill him. And yeah, the guy's a psycho, you're right. But please, look at the environment.
delusions Lance would probably forget about by the time his episode ended, it seems it seeped into Tyler's mind as the cause of Lance's problems. Obviously, there's the political context of it, with Lance being trans and Charlie being conservative and criticizing the trans community. But judging from the leaked messages between Lance and Tyler, it does seem Lance himself is taken aback and shocked that Tyler did what he did. If I were to guess, Tyler took some of the things Lance must have said while in a state of delusion to heart, while Lance had already forgotten about them a while later. Their peer concludes his messages by saying, after talking to another friend apparently right after he did the shooting, he joined a bunch of Discord calls asking if anyone had seen the news while breathing heavily. And literally the next day, he was in call just chatting with people while playing his puzzle games. And also for the record, Tyler 100% calls Lance my love when they are talking alone. Hopefully this
damn! The messages were real!
Some light on what it was like behind the scenes.
And then you have people like Candace Owens being like, no. This guy, there's no way he killed him. No way. It's got to be the Jews.
With all of this context provided, I think it's beyond the shadow of a doubt that the last messages exchanged between Tyler and Lance are real. It also elucidates the nature of their relationship, as Lance was someone Tyler was mostly taking care of rather than having a normal relationship dynamic with. From the looks of it, it seems like Lance is someone who, at least at one point, was very self-aware and proactive as a person, being confident enough to argue with others over his worldview, while Tyler has always been quiet and stayed in the background of any setting he found himself in, including his relationship with Lance. Unfortunately, it turns out that he was simply less expressive of his thoughts. Now, the leaker also sent me their Discord logs, and this dynamic of Lance being the expressive one while Tyler played a subservient role is also reflected there, as Lance messaged the chats way more frequently and even had his own server. The logs I got are of 3 different servers that Tyler and Lance were parts of. Lance under the name Lanceolotl and Fluxolotl, and Tyler is the name Zealous_Monkey and Bedbug Inspector. These messages date all the way back to 2020, and although most of it is pretty irrelevant stuff and boring, it is kind of spooky to see that at some point these guys were like completely normal, just sending memes to each other on Discord.
In 2020. Before they got completely mind raped by college.
Interestingly enough, Tyler frequently spoke of going fishing or making fishing trips that lasted for days with no cell service where he would speak to no one. While this isn't really negative, it does differentiate Tyler from his peers. There's one kind of introvert who stays indoors and plays on the computer, and then there's go fishing in the middle of nowhere with no cell service for days kind of introvert. Still, at least early on, it's clear that the people in this server have no issue with offensive humor and don't necessarily swing politically in any given direction, although there are a few odd things that I have to note, even if they are just jokes. In mid-2020, someone else in the server tags Lance and says, "Nobody said gross when you said you wanted to bang your 2-year-old cousin, Lance." The context of this is that the same guy who sent this message said he wanted to bang snake girls, and Lance responded by saying gross. But honestly, this doesn't explain that much. Another interesting tidbit.
Again, listen, private jokes that are cursed in 2020, like whatever, but
from these chats is when the topic of religion came up, prompting Lance to say,
hello?
Isn't Brigham Young the one with all the quotes about how black people are cursed and can't hold the priesthood until they get uncursed by God? For context, Brigham Young was an early leader of the LDS Church. In response, the person with whom he was talking said that most religions start screwed up, implying that they would get better over time. To which Lance replied, and most still are, basically shutting it down. Long before the gender issue was something—
Alright, so he was a radical anti-religious guy since 2020. He was radically anti-religious, and then he goes out and he kills the #1 preacher of God in the country. Oh my God, it's such a nightmare. It's such a nightmare, bro. Like, this is the rabbit hole. Just use their preferred pronouns. And now we're literally at, the demons are telling me to kill the Christians. Like, do we understand what, this is where we're at right now, bro?
Lance was invested in, his earliest strong opinion is a clear anti-religious sentiment. Still, at no point here is there any sign that Lance's opinion is unquestioningly shared by the entire server, as most people here express pretty reasonable and mixed opinions. Around the same time that those messages about Brigham Young were sent, they were discussing politics and video games, but no one was really arguing as much as they were just expressing their views in a friendly manner. Eventually, Lance says auth-right lib-left unity, referring to the squares of the political compass of authoritarian right and liberal left. So clearly politics weren't taken too seriously by this friend group. A little while later, still in 2020, Tyler can be seen commenting on the presidential debate, saying that it was hilarious, but making no further comments. In September 2020, Lance says, Femboy Friday greater than Tomboy Tuesday, White Girl Wednesday isn't where it's at, followed by White King Wednesday. These seem to purely be jokes, as he showed no signs of identifying as a femboy at this point in time. As a matter of fact, when someone else sends a few messages saying, Femboy hypnosis is finally working, my nipples are so puffy, Jesus Christ, Lance responds with 2 long strings of question marks. Although this may 100% be irony on Lance's part, in November 2020, he sent Vote Jeb to this chat, referencing Jeb Bush's failed and often memed on 2016 presidential campaign. Interestingly enough, at least back in 2020, Tyler seems to be the one who was more politicized from the Discord messages. At one point, he went as far as to suggest that freedom of speech should be amended so that vaccine and COVID skepticism was not protected by it.
Oh, yeah, he was a radical leftist. Radical leftist, amend free speech to force vaccines on people. Yep, there we at.
And could get you punishment by the government. Also, I've repeatedly seen people claim that Tyler was a furry, but in these chats, he seems to deny it, as when another user says he is one, he replies by saying, I told someone I wasn't gonna watch their anime one time and get called a goddamn furry. This country is going downhill. Earlier on, even Lance was open to cracking some more edgy jokes, like me proving that being black is a myth and calling other people libtards. And I'm under the impression that he engaged with lolcow and internet drama culture to some extent. The reason why is because there's a good few messages of him talking to someone else about Terry Davis, where he calls Terry a weird nerd, but acknowledges that he has a sad story, while expressing no hangups about someone else in the server, echoing Terry's use of the N-word to describe CIA agents. There's also a good few messages in which Lance can be seen discussing Chris Chan and his current girlfriend, Flutter, where Lance says, Christorians must be praising the sun, with one odd message comparing someone's looks to Janky, which could be in reference to someone else in the server, but most likely is in reference to Isabella Janky, one of Chris Chan's most infamous tormentors and A-logs. As of 2022, Lance sent a few messages complaining about H3H3, saying this: can't stand the podcast or new content. His old videos are still good. I don't understand how he was able to go from genuinely goofy and enjoyable content to purely bad political takes and one of the most boring podcasts I've listened to. Half the time, he won't even let guests talk.
Again, this is kind of irrelevant, man.
He just interrupts them to make a bad joke and then doesn't let them finish. Another interesting token of Lance talking about the kind of content he interacted with online is his positive review of Wendigoon's content, which seems to come from Isaiah's videos on FNAF lore based on other messages sent by Lance to the server. To put it simply, up until some point in 2024, like I already suspected in my first video,
an H3H3 viewer, what could I say? A guy that watches Five Nights at Freddy's ended up becoming some radical trans fucker, turns out. Again, whatever. This is just a guy with a kid that watches fucking shit. This doesn't mean anything, but
Lance was mostly normal.
It's heartbreaking. This is 2020. You have a mostly normal kid who sure has his weird edgy crash outs on Twitter like every kid does. And then he goes to college. And then he goes to college, man. And then he ends up in this weird relationship, sexual relationship, having butt sex with trans furries, overdosing on homemade HRT and drugs. Is this not diabolical? It's diabolical, bro.
And didn't take much of anything very seriously. Even when his doom scroll nest phase began, he was still capable of making light of what he was up to, saying the following: I have begun only sleeping on the couch, cooler downstairs, and less room to move, or I fall off, get eaten. Tyler, on the other hand, seldom engaged in the same degree of joking as Lance did. The most I could find on him suggesting an interest in edgier online content is a GIF that he posted of Gypsy Crusader. When he did send text messages to the server's chat, it was usually to give people a small window into his private life. In 2020, there was some conversation between him and other users talking about a YouTube channel he once had, which contained a tour of his bedroom. Unfortunately, as far as I know, and according to the messages Tyler sent here, this video and the entire channel have become lost media. In 2021, he said that his brother had accidentally discharged a firearm and shot a hole in the wall, with no further comments from Tyler. In 2023, it seems he became a bit more talkative, and he shared a few more times about his electrical apprenticeship program and what kinds of things he had to do in it. But any apparent character development for Tyler came to a screeching halt in late 2023 to 2024, when Tyler's messages became noticeably more politicized, some of them in reference to war in the Middle East, and some of them joking about the assassination attempt on Trump, saying,
Snowflake liberals can't shoot straight because they too busy being gay. Assassination attempt on Trump. Is this not the reddest of red flags that this guy was going to be an assassin? And you know the craziest part? You know the absolute craziest part? Leftists were talking like this, not just in private servers. They were talking about this publicly, man. This was the public sentiment on social media. The amount of people sitting there complaining that the shooter missed Trump. Like, and really? And you think that it's insane for us to think that it's crazy that these people want to kill us? Like, this dude went from saying, I can't believe they missed Trump, to assassinating Charlie Kirk, allegedly. Is this not insane?
Flake liberals can't shoot straight because they too busy being gay.
Also, he's true, though. That he's just correct.
While he was definitely still reading the room, so to speak, and not breaking into a rant, he clearly became more agitated about these things. Curiously, another member of the group chat was at a campus of all places when a shooting took place, and Lance responded with concern. All of a sudden, this agitation to
fucking asshole. His friend was at a campus, he responded with concern, and then this guy ends up allegedly shooting a guy at a campus. Can't make it up. You can't make it up, man. It's evil. It's tragic.
Gave way to something else, mostly silence, as Lance became increasingly present in servers and started one of his own, the femboy server, as he put it. Right around the time they started dating, Tyler became increasingly inactive, even less expressive than he was initially. Most of the information from this time period comes from Lance, who notified the group chat when he was going on a date with Tyler or watching TV shows with him. Speaking of TV shows, it's quite possible that the show they were watching was Beastars, the big furry anime show, because Lance discussed it in the server on a few occasions. Now, from late 2024 to early 2025, some of Lance's messages
they're out there watching furry anime shows and then they're schlorping around.
Further corroborate the claims made by his and Tyler.
For the record, Beastars is basically a show about a furry society, about how, like, there are carnivores and then there are herbivores, and the carnivores need to be fucking... It's basically anime Zootopia, and it's very political.
anonymous peer. First off, he says that he's been chronically sleeping from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and that it's been wreaking havoc on his life. Then we have a ton of messages in his own server where he's talking to ChatGPT, although I'm sure this is only a fraction of the full extent of his communications with it. Lastly, we have Lance inviting everyone in his server to attend the anti-Trump No Kings protest.
Wow. And these people had the audacity to... The leftist media, for the record, still refuses to acknowledge that this guy's a leftist. All right? The left media still refuses to acknowledge he's a leftist. They still say they don't know his motives. They just know he came from a Mormon Republican family. And this dude is directly organizing going to No Kings protests. No Kings? Would you look at that? He's a leftist. I could have told you that when he was dick deep in a furry gay guy.
Over the previous half a decade worth of Discord messages, nothing from Lance comes even close to as clear of a political expression as this. As far as Tyler's presence in Lance's server, one of the last messages I was able to find of his was sent in August, where he simply says, "I am very ill." Within a month of this message, the tragic day of September 10th comes around, and the following day, Tyler sends his confession message to their old friend group server.
And he posts it in his server. This is like open and shut confession, man. It really is. Just literally open and shut confession.
Interesting to me that he sent it in this server and not to Lance's new server, because I'm not sure why that is. It could just be that he was less familiar with the people there, but based on the kind of messages sent there, which we're going to go over later, it could be that he wanted to avoid having anyone say something that resembled support for his actions. In the original group chat, one of the most prominent users replied, saying this: "Hey everyone, if you haven't seen the news yet, Tyler's post above is true. He was taken into custody earlier today for the shooting of Charlie Kirk. Regardless of the horrible actions that took place, we must take this moment to remember that God is a living and loving God who loves..."
Bro, you're kidding me.
All his children. God calls sinners to be his saints, and I ask that you all take a quiet moment to pray for Tyler and his repentance. While Charlie Kirk's politics were not acceptable to some, I ask that we all say a prayer for him and his family during these confusing times. Love you all. God bless.
Really? Really, bro? Are you kidding me? Like, are you actually kidding me?
Given the clearly religious nature of this post, it's safe to say that this particular Discord server was pretty varied in what kind of people were in it.
No, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck is happening, man.
Especially
that sounds like trolling to me. That sounds like he knows that the feds are gonna get their hands on the Discord server.
since it mostly went quiet after the attack on Charlie Kirk. Over on Lance's server, Lance's final message there was from a day after the shooting, tagging a user that, as of the archiving of the messages, was no longer in the server. After Tyler's crime took place, many of the users
yeah, the guy that shot the... That's right, I totally forgot about that. Melissa Hortman, who was assassinated. Democrat lawmaker who was assassinated. The person that killed her had No Kings flyers in his car too. Yeah, I know. Because No Kings is an inherently anti-America rally. Because they're making believe Trump is a king when Trump is the democratically elected president of the United States. And they're out there trying to make believe he's a king. And what do you do if a fascist regime rises up? Well, you have to fight them. It is an inherently anti-America rally.
Complained about the harassment and unwanted attention from journalists and random people online digging up everybody Lance was connected to. That's a perfectly reasonable reaction, especially since, as far as I can tell, most of them just occasionally played video games with Lance, so their connection to Tyler was tenuous at best, even if they shared a Discord server. But there are a few things I want to go over that I didn't mention in my previous video, such as the fact that Tyler had a few blurbs of unusual online presence that I hadn't seen. For example, he had a DeviantArt under his older handle, Crafton247, where he lists himself as they/them.
Okay, all right.
It's not possible for this account to belong to someone else that created it after the assassination.
So he was a they-them, it seems. Interesting. Wow, color me so shocked and surprised. I didn't see that coming.
As it was created 2 years ago. Then we have another account with the same exact handle, this time on Fur Affinity. But there does...
Fur Affinity is a furry porn website. Basically, every one of these fucks have a Fur Affinity account. It's crazy.
Doesn't seem to be any significant activity on it, just like on DeviantArt. And for those of you who don't know, Fur Affinity is like the furry website. It's the #1 furry website, okay? Now, there's also 2 Reddit accounts under the names Crafton247 and Crafton248, neither of which contain any significant info. There's one post on each account, both of some pretty mundane content and from years ago, long before he was dating Lance and became more politicized. Now, lastly, there are the Steam accounts of both Tyler and Lance. Tyler was clearly much more active on Steam, being level 50 on the platform. It is interesting that Tyler once set his name on there as Donald Trump, but besides that, nothing of note really. Part of why there's very little to say is that Tyler clearly set most of his settings to more private options, which again is pretty reflective of the kind of guy he was. Lance, on the other hand, had pretty much every facet of his profile completely public, where we can see that the last game he played was 2 days after Charlie's death, and his profile has been completely inactive since then. Given the testimony from Tyler and Lance's friend, even people who knew them in real life and frequented their living space only ever caught glimpses of the exact nature of their relationship. Based on on the last few months prior to Charlie Kirk's assassination, as far as I understand, they weren't really having anyone over, and their output of messages to their online friends also significantly decreased. I have done my best to contact Lance about all of these claims and get his side of what happened, but he has not responded to 3 different requests for comment. Unless one of them, Tyler or Lance, decides to speak up and elucidate the lead up to what happened, I think there's no chance we can piece together a full narrative of the events that contributed to Tyler's mindset. Clearly, it was politically motivated.
Obviously, it's a politically motivated radical left motherfucker that melted his brain on ideology and drugs. All of his friends around him refused to acknowledge he's a psycho and instead affirmed his delusions. Then he went out there and murdered an innocent, good man in front of his family. And anyone out there that's sitting, seemingly, and anyone out there that's trying to push agendas because they had a dream is retarded.
As both Tyler and Lance had become much more political, particularly around the topic of gender. Hopefully one day
and they got political around gender. It's always the gender thing. It's literally the demonic shit. See, no political assassinations happen because they disagree on fiscal policy. It's not because they disagree with Trump putting tariffs, okay? Never. It's always the gender stuff because that is the inherently anti-God stance. They killed him because he was a man of God, all right? It's literally that obvious. He preached God, and they killed him because he preached the gospel. Man and woman I made them, quote from Genesis chapter 1, all right? Man and woman I made them, and they cannot stand, Genesis chapter 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. What a nightmare situation. Like, subscribe, and this video was streamed live on kick.com/Nuxanor. See you there. Stay weird, fam.